Be back on Zoom.
Here we are back on Zoom. Welcome back to the things we know. I'm Lisa. This is Carrie, and we're so grateful to have you here with us on season three. I hope you've already enjoyed the episodes that we've dropped so far. We have so many more coming already planned, some great interviews. But today we wanted to touch base on facts. What are those?
Yeah,
And why are people not paying attention to them?
right. And before we get into that, I just want to say if you heard our first episode, you know that we are buckled up and ready to tackle this year with as much, groundedness, joy when we can accomplish it, and just, you know, un like not allowing so many rough things to permeate. And it is very difficult because as we're recording, Lisa's literally sitting amongst horrible fires in LA, and our hearts are just broken for so many people. And so
Indeed.
with that in mind, I just want to acknowledge that even though this will come out a little bit later, even when this comes out, we'll still be you know, putting together just how awful that fires like this unfold for people, and what a tragedy this is. So
Yeah.
not a great way to start off the year. Whew.
No, so far
um
2025 is not my favorite. And
yeah,
and
definitely not.
but I kind of can't remember the last time a year was my favorite, not gonna
I
lie.
know, I'm wondering.
When was that year that was my favorite?
I was just thinking about like that the last day of 2019 and having
Yes.
family in town, and they brought in those fun little hats, and it was when families, when our kids were still kind of young enough. I mean, Peter
Yeah.
went out later that night, but we were celebrating together, and we were all like, screw it, 2019, 2020 is going to be blah blah
Oh
blah.
my
And I
God.
mean, and we all know what happened that year. I mean, even before the pandemic hit, horrible sad things were happening. So
Yeah.
I feel like excitement for a new year is for the young. And I think as we age with wisdom, we just are like, wonder what this year's gonna bring.
I mean, yeah, and I do feel like there's something about these last 10-ish, give or take, years where like every New Year's Eve I see those funny memes of like nobody go rushing into this year excited, like walk in slowly. And yeah, and yet here we are, and obviously LA is LA. I know everybody if is watching and aware of it. I know it's on the national news, but it is one city and not everybody's affected by it, and everybody's living their life and as they should. But yeah, it's already been very interesting. And I think the other thing I'd like to presence, if you don't mind, is just, you know, part of what we were talking about with Buckle Up Buttercup in particular was, this is who you and I are. I don't
Yeah,
think we hid from that in the first two seasons by any stretch of the imagination. Yes, we champion women. Yes, we support women, and that's what we do in our business. But that includes a lot of pieces, right? We're just not going to sit here and again, we joke about how our first opening was like about being the sexiest you, and as the pod has unfolded, we realize it's not. That's one itty bitty piece of it. There's so much more that goes into being a woman, to being a champion of women. And yeah, quite frankly, we're heading into 4 years where, and we'll talk about this a little bit here in a second, where women are being less and less valued. And so I don't know, we might have listeners who are turned off by our activism, and that's
yeah,
okay. Then we're probably not the
yeah,
pod for you. But the reality of it is we can't champion women, we can't work with women and extricate politics out of that.
yeah,
And
totally.
so I guess I just want to be super transparent and say a lot of our pods are going to have that built into it because it's part of the reality of this where we
Sure.
are in the world.
It's true. And I was just at it, with dinner with friends, and they were asking me to describe like how you and I came to be
Mm.
similar in politics. And I said, well, first of all, if you've met anyone from the Midwest, It's in their blood. I mean, if you've seen some of those past elections where they showed us where like every state was red and Illinois was blue, I think, or like,
Oh
or
yeah.
was it Minnesota, something like that. But I mean, it's in your blood. As a Midwesterner, I rarely met anyone, and there's a lot of like people from Minnesota and Illinois out here in Oregon, and they don't like to talk about politics, but they sure vote blue.
Mm,
And I don't mean to, you know, just minimize you to that because there's a lot more reasons for that. But like Lisa is dyed in the wool, as she said. I actually was raised in Orange County, pretty conservative, and but I was also taught and raised to have a conscience, to be of service, and to think critically, and to
yeah.
read a lot. And I was a poli-sci major. Not that I did a ton with that, but there was a point where, with a lot of respect, my dad and I were constantly debating, and I think it helped us both kind of really hone on what we were reading, because we were both wanted to be right. So for me, it definitely came out of out of kind of growing into an adult and realizing, and having experiences in the world, like working in urban areas and around much more diverse communities than what I'd grown up in and where I'd gone to school. So I think mine was a journey. And people listen to us and they might think, oh, they're coaches, or they're this or they're that. Like, no, Lisa's like tried and true, and mine was a journey. And we have very different ways we came to it. And we do agree on just about everything, but it's not because we bought it.
Totally. It's because
You
we've
grew
lived
it,
it.
and I
Hmm.
got there. Yeah, and we've lived
Yeah.
it, and we've worked with so many different people, and we've learned, and we've been wrong sometimes, and we've been right sometimes. And so I think it's everybody has to come to a journey on their own. I don't hate people who vote differently than me, just like they don't hate me. I respect that we all have differences, but there are things that I am grappling with, and today's topic is one of them.
I
And
know
I
what I
think
mean.
people,
We didn't even, this
I,
was a smooth transition. I didn't even mean for it to be, but yeah, moves right
I
into
know,
it.
like, so you introduced the topic, but I will say, I would say people on both sides should be frustrated by this.
Oh, a million percent. I am going to say straight up, I have fallen prey to misinformation, no question. I and I'm willing to admit that. I think that's one of the
Mhm.
big pieces, right? Like,
Yep.
in fact, there's
Yeah.
going to be a piece I want to mention. I'll mention here in a little bit around the fires that I saw something that sounded true. I saw it a couple of different places, but then I saw the opposite somewhere else. So I have to do a little more research. We'll talk about here in a second. But um, when something is not true, I am willing to say, "Huh, well, I fucked that up. I misunderstood, or I did not do enough research on my part." Um, and so I think if I'm going to pre-frame the takeaway today, that's what I want this pod to be, to ignite in any of our listeners, whether you are a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat or a dyed-in-the-wool Republican or MAGA. I want to invite you, as you listen to this, to recognize that facts are facts. They're not opinions. And we all make mistakes. And the way you get out of that is admitting it and doing better in the future. So
Yeah.
let's start.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, it's funny that we came up with this topic like in November. I came up
Months
with it.
ago.
I remember saying, like, what the hell are facts? If nobody can agree on anything, what was driving me crazy during the election and long before the election, but if there's no one place we can settle a disagreement or a difference of opinion on and go, well, okay, let's both agree, like science says this, or actual crime reports say that, right? um an example, this huge voting reason around im- immigration, right? And
Yeah.
illegal immigrants committing violent crimes. And if you actually look at Texas, I don't know about Florida, but Texas and Arizona
California.
specifically, and California, but I was just going to say those two states I remember, having a published crime report from their border cities and from their states in whole, and the actual violent crimes committed by illegal immigrants was very low. And and much lower than that of American citizens and American white men. So
Yep.
what was fascinating is being told that they were coming in droves and committing crimes, and then putting a huge spotlight on specific trials and pretty gruesome crimes that happen to be committed by people who were not citizens. People believed this, and there was no pointing at any fact that was going to change that, because emotions and fears were already driven way up. Something less emotional, but things like people just wanted to believe, or things about prices, or like just promises, or just things that weren't true about the opponent. I mean, the most egregious and weird one was that like during a debate, like why would you do this during a debate when you can get fact checked right there? Was Trump saying that Kamala had met with what's his name, Putin. She's like,
Oh,
I've never met him. You know,
yeah.
like, but you met with him and told him not, you told him to invade, or you couldn't get him to not invade. It was like that kind of thing. Like, these things are so strange. And I'm not just pointing at Trump, like, it's everywhere. It's in media. And like you
Yep.
said, sometimes it can be on both sides. There's just like, if people say it with enough conviction and enough times, they not only get people to believe them, they get people to vote a certain way. And this isn't just about voting anymore. It really is about just an entire alt-right community that's developed, because maybe rightfully so, like legacy media got so virtuous in what it was doing that they felt like they needed to create over here. I'm not saying it's justifiable to lie, but I'm saying here they went to find a voice and find a place, and then it's not as regulated and people can say whatever shit they want. And so I do think that like both sides have driven each other there. I just wonder what is going to unite us in actual fact.
Well, and it's interesting when you talk about the debates. I mean, the debates this time around weren't even allowed to be fact checked. The few times,
I know.
and I mean, you and I were together for the VP debate, and JD Vance was literally like, "You aren't supposed to fact check me." Remember that? We were like, "Are you
Yeah.
fucking?" And
Well, fact check has now become one of those buzzwords that we're going to talk about in the next episode. That
yeah,
like that's what liberals do, and it's not like, hello, it's literally called fact checking. And again, to be fair, everybody should be fact checked,
a
both sides.
million percent, a
And
million percent.
if we can't agree on what are facts, no wonder they don't want fact checking.
So it's
Just
interesting.
yesterday or 2 days ago, tell about like what you were sending me that I didn't even know about fact checking.
Oh, yeah. So yes, top line of this is that Mark Zuckerberg came out for Meta, which is obviously Facebook, WhatsApp. I mean, WhatsApp's a communication thing, but Facebook and Instagram, and decided he is no longer going to have fact checkers employed. Now there's something called, like, it's not notes, but he has something else that comes
Notes.
from X, comes from Twitter, where it's kind of like Wikipedia, where anybody can go in and give context to what somebody is saying, which is only as good as the person who's commenting, right? Like, if they don't know, they don't know. And so that's one of there's something else which we'll talk about probably in another episode, but that was the big thing, is he laid off all of his fact checkers because the Discord out there. And the weird thing is, it's like, I don't know. Again, to me, it happens so much more on the right. And maybe I say that only because I don't fall prey to the left. Like, I look at some things on the left, and I always run it through or I have recently, in recent years, run it through um, a filter of, does this feel too on the nose for me? Does this feel too much like what I want to believe? Is it true? And so things like Democracy Now, or like these different social media platforms or websites that absolutely feed into what I want to be true, I take them with a grain of salt. I don't share them. I don't dive deep into that. But what's so funny is, in some ways, this feels like something that's only happened. I mean, it got such a big push around Kellyanne Conway and the term alternative facts. But Stephen Colbert coined the phrase truthiness in October of 2005. So even though there's been this big, I mean, there is, I want to use the word renaissance again, but we just did that with misogyny. Even though there's this big push or this big discussion around facts and facts, my facts versus your facts, it's been going on a long time. Even when he said truthiness in the Colbert Report, that was like not new news, right? Like this idea of people coming out, and so I do think there's something around it being tied to social media and the prolifercy, that's not the word, I don't know how to say the word, of just anybody being able to say anything. And if it's said enough times and you want to believe it, you're going to believe it versus actually doing the research to find out if it's true or not.
Yeah. Oh, I I was gonna say too, like this, I don't know how long the term fake news has been around too, but being told over and over again that anything you're hearing is fake and what they're telling you is true, again, feels like I'm poking at Fox News only, although they did have to pay a massive fine um on a couple occasions
Yep.
for
Communicate.
misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
And also, as we know, legacy media is paying some fines now.
Yep.
So I I do feel like it's this desensitization that goes along with the internet, that goes along with all the podcasting. It's like where anyone will say anything and people will listen. I mean, I had um somebody painting here and he was listening over and over again to Joe Rogan. And I was thinking like, I get through this guy's lens, very cool guy, really cool guy. I get through his lens why this is speaking to him.
Right.
So if something is speaking to you and it's evoking something and you feel seen and understood, that feels true,
Yep.
right?
Totally.
And so it reminds me of what we do in coaching, which is just because, like feelings are real, thoughts and feelings are real. They might not be true. And I
Yep.
think that's a distinction that we've lost in civil society. I think it's really hard to imagine how we're ever going to heal any of this division, the more and more and more fear that's out there, because fear is fueling all this. Like, spoiler
Mm-hmm.
alert, fear of anything
Fear.
different, fear of anything.
I mean, I think yes, fear of the other for sure. And
Yeah.
also, to your point, not feeling seen, heard, listened to,
Fear
included,
neglect. Yeah.
neglect,
Yeah.
and if we're moving into a society, and we are, that is going to be more colorful, more races, white is not going to be the majority anymore. That fear, that thing that people think they're losing because of this transition in our demographics. I mean, there are just people who are clombing right onto that and take. I don't even know if I want to say taking advantage because I feel like the people that are saying it, they also believe it on some level.
Right.
Although, again, Fox News, we've seen there's plenty of tapes that
Right.
that they don't believe it, but they're saying it. Um,
Well,
yeah,
and
so
then there's like TikTok. There's just a million
ugh,
creators out there
yep,
that will look at the exact same situation. They'll look
yep,
at the fires, they'll look at a rally, they'll look at, and they will give you very believable details about it that completely contradict each other.
yep,
That's fascinating to me, right? Because like what are facts? Like facts like is verifiable data,
yep,
concrete evidence. We used to be able to agree on that. I think in my lifetime, I think we knew what that was, like
totally,
things could be settled by facts on both sides. um Now this, you know overlap between opinion and fact, viral memes, people will literally tell you what you're seeing is not what you're seeing,
yep,
and then that gets just exacerbated on. I've never been on Twitter, X, whatever. And I like have barely dabbled in TikTok, but I see the allure and I see how the algorithms feed that.
yep,
And so of course, if you wonder if something's true, and then these devices pick up that that's kind of the rabbit hole you're going down, they're going to keep verifying it for you. That's what keeps you
yep,
addicted to using their devices and then buying the products that support those devices, right? That sponsor those. So I mean, it definitely is playing it like this whole it isn't just being driven by politicians is what I was trying to get at. It's
Absolutely.
like it's definitely there's people profiting. There's, you know, the Mark Zuckerbergs, there's people profiting from you shopping for your own facts.
Yes, no question, no question. And like I said, I mean, I have absolutely fallen prey to that on my side, you know, because you're right. When it's making you feel a certain way, especially if it is making you angry, right? As much as anger is not good and it's horrible for you, it's also energizing, you know? And so if you are being pushed to the things that agree with your worldview, especially if you're feeling underserved, underrecognized, it feels good. It feels easy to be like, yeah, that's right, that's what's happening. And and I mean, again, I'll share the fire one right now. So, and again, I just figured this out right before we started, so I don't know really where the two, where the truth is, but I had seen something around the fires that one of the reasons that the firefighters are so stretched so thin. I mean, the logical fact-based thing is LA is ginormous. LA is a huge, huge county. And we have one fire happening at the ocean, and we have one fire happening in a burb. And on a good day, it would still probably take you an hour to get from the Palisades to Altadena on a good day. And and then
An
we have
hour,
these
you said?
other
Okay.
fires happening as well. There's whatever. So there's all these. So there's on average right now there's 5 fires burning at a time, and they're all over the place. So partially they're stretched thin because they're just that's a lot of space to take over. But one of the things I had seen yesterday, and again we're doing this during the fires, was that the budget for the firefighters was substantially less than the budget for LAPD. And that tracked for me. And I saw it 2 different places. And so I even posted something about it. But then I saw somebody else say today that's not true, that they've actually each year gotten more money, more of a budget. So it probably just is, you know, it is what it is. When you've got 5 ginormous fires happening, it is hard to get to all of them. It is hard to have the water pressure to get to all these fires. The winds were crazy. They couldn't fly and dump things. But I fell for it, you know, and again, and maybe there's somewhere in the middle. There's the truth there. I want to do a little bit more research when we get done here. But my point is, it's easy when you're angry, when you're sad, when you're vulnerable to believe what is in alignment with how you're physically feeling.
Mm, yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Think about all those people in Asheville
Yeah, in
and
North Carolina.
all
Yep.
those people who were in the path, the worst path of that hurricane. They are still. Is it Helene? Hurricane Helene? Was that what it was?
Yes, I think that
What was it
I
called?
think it was Helene. I don't know.
Gosh, my brain.
I know.
Um, I too have, besides you, have people I love in those fires, and I've been not sleeping well, so my brain is less firing than usual. But I remember, I mean, we all remember how a bunch of disinformation was being spread by a lot of Republicans.
Again,
But
around
it wasn't just
immigration.
Republicans. But it wasn't even about that. It was saying that the Biden administration wasn't helping, and it was saying that the was it the National Guard or like FEMA? It was FEMA
Right, that they'd
wasn't like
taken money
they
from
were
FEMA to give
right,
to
right,
yeah,
yes, but also like that FEMA wasn't responding, and they weren't
right,
going to respond to
right.
people with MAGA flags and things. And there was actually conservative Republican elected officials that were like, stop this,
Yeah.
stop. This is
Because it's
very
dangerous.
dangerous. And so that was pretty blatant. That's a blatant example of this, but it did damage. People were really like leaving their houses and going to help people, even though they were being told not to, because it breeds distrust.
Right.
And which is, you know, a big part of kind of what's happened here. We saw it with government and agencies as long as like 23 years ago, like post 9/11, really, you know, and the conspiracy theories. And I know it's been around forever. Like there's always
Yeah.
been conspiracy theorists, there's always been distrust of government, but I think it's gotten incredibly much higher
Yes.
In this century, right? And then financial crises, just like people,
Yeah.
they can't trust their accountants. They don't trust official institutions. They're used to not trusting government, and then they're not trusting anyone in the financial world and corporations. And then we get into science and academia, and they have become the ones that they used to hold all the facts, and now, like
Well,
in the face of science and in the face of higher education, that we used to say, okay, they've done the work, they've done the research, let's just trust the mathematicians on that. There's a lot of misinformation going around that causes people to question that. And then obviously media outlets, scandals like the one we were talking about a couple weeks ago. Now, when I think of that, I think that's he said, she said. There's always going to be three sides to a story.
meaning the
There's the
Blake
truth.
Lively one.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
In lawsuits, I mean, there's a whole world of law that's built around the fact that facts have to be, litigated, and sometimes it's really just about the better lawyer. But going back to what we wanted to talk about is not that. We're not talking about their side of the story or her side of the story. We're literally talking about verifiable facts. Did this happen? Like, has this been proven? Is there any evidence of what you're saying? And how big was that crowd? Or how did she ever meet that leader? These kind of things, like, these are actual facts, and it doesn't seem to matter. And that just has me at such a loss. And it's because I think I always liked math, because it was finite and you could move on, right?
Right.
Anything else you could kind of perseverate over. Should I rewrite that? But like, okay, I figured this out. This is clearly the answer. I'm moving on. I like to settle things with facts, and it just matters less and less. And I don't
Well, it
know
makes me
where to
think of
point.
what you were saying about you and your dad having in your growth and into an adult and your own belief system. And you and I've talked about this before. I had a stepdad where we had conversations back in the day. And did we agree in the end? No, but I learned something and he probably learned something, and so that same situation with your dad. And then, science is interesting because I the pandemic, I mean, again, holy moly. When I think Anthony Fauci is such an interesting study because, during the AIDS crisis and everything he was able to do around that, we believed him. We people politicians believed him. Like he made things happen. He helped so intensely. Fast forward to 2020, and all of a sudden science is wrong and he's lying and he's making this stuff up. And then I see a lot of this, well, masks didn't really work. Okay, but the problem is science does evolve, so just because what we started with and saying everybody should wear a mask, it's going to keep you from spreading, did it? I don't, I'm not going to, let me not talk about masks because I still believe masks work. I wear them when I'm
Yeah.
sick. One that I do think was not correct is the outside piece, right? Like at the beginning, we didn't know how far it would spread. So the 6 feet distance shouldn't even be outside. Even if you are outside, be 6 feet. That's like to me one of those situations where science is figuring it out, and there is an aspect of as we know more, we do different. I wouldn't say do better, we do different. And so then people will say, well, see, science wasn't right. Those facts were wrong. Well, no, it's what we knew at the time. This is how science works. It keeps evolving. And then he was
Yeah.
just vilified. He was absolutely vilified. What I know for a fact is injecting bleach is not the way to get rid of COVID. Neither are horse pills, horse tranquilizers, or whatever the fuck they were taking. But there you go. That's dangerous. How many people died because they did not believe the science? I
I
just,
know. Yeah.
yeah, that is to me just unbelievable
Yeah.
still to this day. We're
There
5 years out.
there are so many people you and I know who will, till they're blue in the face, spew out what they feel are verifiable facts to the opposite. And it is sad and exhausting, and also, bless, like blessings to you. But it is so interesting that, and then there's just a lot of emotion and certainty that there's some conspiracy to hide their facts from the rest of the world, and they
Right.
feel like they're in the right around it, and that's sad. I mean, I'm married to a medical professional who, you know, has a full on medical education, and I mean, what he saw, what he witnessed, you know, perfectly healthy young mothers coming in and, you know, fighting for their lives at childbirth because of COVID, making things worse. I just, if you talk to anyone who was on the front lines there, you'd feel just like it's ridiculous for anyone to question that or call that a hoax or even question those as facts. It's bizarre, and yet emotion and like what people want to believe
Right.
really do tend to divide us so much. It's yeah, and I mean, we will hit another pandemic with our growing population, so it's going to be. I think I was surprised by all the dissension. I
Mm.
didn't expect everyone to be super united by it, but I was just surprised by how fervently people were disagreeing. I won't be surprised next time. I
Okay,
guess
but
I've
you just
always known that. I've always thought of it as a small group of like anti-vax people, and I don't even want to get into all that because I know, you know, like I really want to respect each parent's decisions around their kids, but a worldwide pandemic with like world's leading scientists, you know, doing their best to try and, you know, like help us through it as a global, you know, as a global community. That was fascinating to me.
you just brought up something so interesting though. We talked
But
about 9/11, right? 9/11, there was plenty of conspiracy theories, but right out of the gate, this country came together. You know, every congressperson, Republican, Democrat, stood on the steps of the Capitol saying, God bless America. Like there was a hot moment as a dyed in the wool Democrat. I was at the beginning impressed with how George W. handled everything. I was impressed by how Rudy Giuliani handled everything. There was that to me was the last time that we all came together. The fact that we couldn't come together over the pandemic, the fact that the some of the shit that is being said about Biden and Newsom right now from our president elect and other Republicans is infuriating. I saw something the other day that a congressman said about Carter that was infuriating, and he backtracked it and he apologized. Like, that's the thing that is really, I think, one of the saddest pieces of this whole lack of fact checking and believing is the divisiveness of it all in these
mm,
moments where 20 years ago, everybody would have been sending love to LA. Everybody would have been rallying around Carter, no matter whether he was a good president or not. He was an amazing human being. And yet that doesn't happen anymore. And I think that is one of the saddest outcomes of this inability to believe facts versus your own facts, which, side note, are opinions.
hmm yeah, that is true. I mean, that is true. The classy thing, the presidential thing, the leader thing is to have decorum and not
Mm-hmm.
be referring to disagree and maybe even not personally even like
Yep.
a colleague in the world of governing, but not to like be a sixth grade bully and call him new scum.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like
Yep.
that is just so unprecedented. But I mean, we're a dying breed because that clearly does, like the majority of people who voted don't care how classless those kind
I
of things
know.
are. So in fact,
So
maybe some
sad.
people even like it, you know,
Oh
but
yeah. Yeah.
and I'm not gonna act here like everyone who I voted for has always been classy either, you know,
Oh God.
in
I,
every
I voted
way.
for
But
Blagojevich. So no.
so but those things are so sad in the way in the moment of tragedy. Why don't we all come together the way we used to? I
So
yeah,
sad.
that is sad, and we could go in that direction. Like, back to facts. And what are facts? I think so many times when you and I have a topic, we chew on it and then we have some sort of glimmer of hope or some idea or like, what direction are we going in? And I literally got nothing. I was shocked when you were sending me stuff the other day about Facebook, but then also, was it like McDonald's,
Yep.
Ford,
Yep.
other
Walmart.
companies are
Yep.
are now they're all just maybe not rolling back fact checkers, but it started with that, like rolling back fact checkers. I think what I'm trying to get at, in the absence of facts or like some sort of line that we all sort of agree to is correctness, right? Either it's either like, let's agree that this is true so we don't have to, that's gone. But
Yep.
also like now, like when you take away fact checking, like it brings in the ability to treat people however you want to treat them too, right?
Yep.
Because with the absence of facts comes dehumanization, and with dehumanization comes bigotry, and
Yep.
and so it's like a slippery slope that goes into an episode that we're getting into next week. So I don't want to go too deep into that, but I think like I got nothing, because I think like, okay, let's say that's true, that fact checking became too politicized and it was just all these, virtue signaling leftists that were fact checking. Okay, like so
Then
like
fact check on the
then
right.
right, then fact check on the right. Like who do we agree? Do we need like the Pope? I mean, like who do we
No,
agree
because
comes in?
they don't like the Pope too. He's too woke.
That's true.
I don't know. I think
Which is
I
scary
mean,
considering. So
yeah, no
like
kidding.
who comes in as the neutral? Like when I was in high school, our colors were red and gold, and there was this, it was pretty neat. It's this annual competition, it was a musical. I don't know if I've ever told you about this, but
Mm-mm.
it's pretty neat. The entire school gets divided into red team, gold team, and there's like a drama team, a dance team, choral team, and then there's like all the cool backdrop stuff for people who want to like build sets, and they're given a theme, and student council is it's terrible now that I think about it, the white team. It's supposed to be the neutral team, but they're the white team, so because the colors were red, gold, and white, so
Right.
sounds pretty bad. um but anyway, the neutral team was the ones who could kind of make sure everything was going well. And so it's like
Who's the neutral
in our
team?
own nation, like we used to have like the Constitution be that, or the judicial branch be that, and like all these things are in flux and in question right now. And I go to people like Sharon McMahon, who I adore. Sharon Says So, if you follow her on Instagram. She's a former government teacher. She's written books about unsung heroes in America, people whose voices weren't included in history that should have been. She's great because she will constantly answer questions of people like, yeah, believe what he says on immigration, but no, he can't do that to the Constitution, or we probably can't buy Greenland, like things like that. So
Yeah.
I am hungry constantly for anybody who can give me hope that logic and facts will prevail. I'm not sure what that says about me and my personality type. When we water down our values, to like, what are your top values? Not water down, but like, hone in
Yeah.
on
Yeah. Yeah.
what are your values that drive you. You and I both have justice as a big one of them.
Yeah.
And justice to me is like, what's true? Not even what's fair, because I know fair, will just be blue in the face if you go for fair. But what's true? Just what's true? What can we agree on so that we don't have to spin our wheels, and like find that comforting. I
Yeah.
find, even if it's not in the favor of what I believe, I find it comforting that I can't do anything about that because it's a fact. And I can't change anything about it. And I don't know where to look for that. I constantly hope that people's, most honest parts of themselves will prevail, that they'll grow in some way. And I'm often disappointed, but not always. I really do appreciate when somebody takes responsibility, someone admits they're wrong. I think if we saw more and more of that in leadership, we would heal as a country. I long for that.
No, I mean, I think you're right. And when you said the thing about, I don't know what you just said, because also brain not totally working today, but it strikes me of like January 6th, 2025. When you talk, I guess you said facts to be true, even when you don't like them.
Yeah.
I clearly don't like that Trump is president, but I do like
Hmm.
that January 6th of 2025, there was an actual peaceful transfer of power again. So, hallelujah. That is a fact that I don't like, but it happened and it's true. And when you work from a place of facts, then you get to work from a place of strength. When you're working from, because I think that's the other piece that's just sort of hitting me right now is like when you're working from your own set of facts, it's very wobbly because there might be some truthiness to it, but for the most part, if it is your fact, if it is your opinion that you are deciding is fact, it's wobbly because it's not data driven. And so there is something, albeit horrifying but comforting, to see that we had again a peaceful transfer of power. And so yes, I think I'm with you. I don't, this feels again like a point in history that I don't know how we come back from, this whole facts aren't facts thing. Um, Oddly, in my lifetime, I feel like there's been these points in my life where I've been like, oh shit, we're never coming back from that. Fox News was one of them. Social media is another. This is another where I'm like, we can't go back to the good old days. They don't exist anymore. So I think I hear you in the somewhat of the hopelessness, and I guess I circle back around to what I said at the beginning, that if you are not in alignment with Carrie and I's politics, that is okay. We still love you. We're still glad you're here. We're still glad you're listening. And I am owning that I have made mistakes and believed things that weren't true because they felt good to me. I would love for you all to do that as well. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah. A bunch of like rolling through my head right now. And I also want to just acknowledge the fact that news outlets that I think are spreading misinformation, but news outlets that formed around more conservative messaging happened because they, like, whether it was factual or not, they felt the NPRs and the CNNs were, had a liberal bias, and
Yeah,
they
and
do,
they
and
do.
and
And I
so
know
I
that.
get that. We get that. I don't even. It's so funny because when have gotten in arguments with people I love about stuff, they're like, "Where do you get your news?" I'm like, "I don't get it from CNN. I don't know why you think I do. Like
Right,
that's not what
right.
I'm listening to all the time." Um, so I want to acknowledge that. And when I think of the things that were so harmful that people were believing, that people were suggesting that abortions could happen right up until birth, and I was like, wow, if you don't want to believe politicians, I understand you. You think highly of me and you think highly of my husband. He was the president of a board that's a national organization for OB hospitalists. He has literally all the facts because they have to review every case, right? He's like, that is not legal anywhere. It's
Nope,
not legal anywhere. And I
nope.
remember getting upset in the vice president debate that Wells
Governor
wasn't,
Walls. Mm-hmm.
yeah, wasn't getting into the facts of it because he thought it was so ridiculous. And I really wanted him to. I really wanted him to like shut that down. The amount of people that were putting it out, people you and I knew,
I know.
putting it out there as if it was fact, was so frustrating. There were so many things that were so obviously proven, like you could prove in a second that they were wrong, but people were spreading them and believing them. This boxer in the Olympics,
Yeah,
that did huge harm. People,
yeah.
J.K. Rowling and so many people spreading. And what I will say is I was really, really impressed that some people came back on social media and
Yes.
admitted they were completely wrong. And I wanted to see more people do that. And then it felt settled, even though her life was turned upside down. Her life was in danger because she came from a
Yep.
country where she was in danger for that. Her parents were like, oh my God, we raised this girl as a female. There was the source that the information came from was completely disproven. And yet it's still festered and it still festers. People are still saying crap about her and going, oh, it turns out she is a dude. And like, what? Where is this coming from? And this, it's always this, this subversive channels, and then it just builds because people want to believe stuff that
Right.
supports the things that they feel passionately about, which again are fueled either by neglect or fear, right? It threatens their love, safety, and belonging in some way. And so anything they can grab onto, they don't have to even verify it. Nobody's verifying it. And we don't even know where they can verify it anymore. So this kind of stuff is exhausting. And those are just two examples that like have frustrated me and probably are the reason I came up with this topic. I'm like, what are facts? Really?
Well, and again, I think the thing that just keeps strikes me with both of even those examples is how unsafe it makes us in the grand scheme of things. When we cannot
Yeah.
agree on data-driven facts, more often than not, it is putting us in danger.
Yep.
I think at the end of the day, the firefighters, of course, are going to be hailed for everything they could and did do here in LA. And there's something that strikes me around, are people going to be angry at them or angry at Karen Bass or Newsom or whoever they decided that is the enemy here, instead of just being like, thank God we saved as much as we did, and so it puts humans and communities in danger when we cannot agree on data driven information, i.e.
which,
facts.
which brings me to global warming and the fact that fires in January, I don't know who can explain this if it's not science, right?
Well, and
So
it's
I
interesting.
just,
I was watching the news this morning, and the local news that are in the thick of all of this, literally. We've had 2 years with a pretty good amount of rain, 23 and 24, and in fact, above average rain, which in and of itself was unusual. And so we had a lot of growth. And then we have not had rain in 8 months, and the rainy season starts in October, and we have had less than an inch of rain since October. And so, yeah, this is climate change, people. It just is. It just is. And yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. And you know what? If you don't believe in it, God is blessed. I hope you never live in a place where there are fires and there are hurricanes and there are blizzards but where on earth is that exactly? I don't know. Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Mm-mm.
I think that that's a big fear of mine. It's one of the reasons I vote
Mm.
differently than the people I grew up around. It's because I really truly believe there is a lot we can do to reverse and slow down a lot of this stuff. And we
Mm.
unfortunately are about to inaugurate an administration that really doesn't agree, doesn't see that, and in my opinion, I'm not saying this is a fact, really refuse to acknowledge it because it gets in the way of a lot of profit for their supporters. So,
Agreed.
that's, some people might say it's more than an opinion, but but I'm just gonna say, like, that's my concern, is that this these kinds of things like hurricanes, the amount of hurricanes, the fires, the earthquakes, the things that are
The
happening more and more and more,
intensity of them.
the intensity of them is literally like screaming in our faces what this
Yeah.
is. And instead of bringing us together,
Yep.
it's being used as an opportunity to divide. And like, it's weird. It screws everybody.
Yeah.
It screws everybody.
Yep.
So, yeah.
We could talk about this forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
Should we move to the song?
Yeah, I wanted to just mention, when I was thinking about this, there's this term I came across. I'd never heard about it, called curriculum integration. I have no idea if it's going to take hold or if it's gonna, get rolled back like all the other things we're seeing that we fought for that are going away. But states like California and New Jersey have introduced bills for K through 12 digital citizenship and fact checking skills.
Ooh.
I think that gives me hope, right? Like media
Mm.
literacy education, teaching young people because they have devices put in front of them so young to like think critically and question things, right? So that's kind of interesting. Um, and workplace and community workshops, there are public libraries. I don't know in which communities. I should find out in case people are curious. Public libraries are often hosting sessions to help people detect doctored images and deep fake videos. So
Mm.
there is some efforts out there. There's nonpartisan groups like I don't know how to say it, PolitiFact,
Yeah, PolitiFact.
factcheck.org,
Hmm.
AP Fact Check. Um, Ground News is something my husband told me about, where you can look at like the news of the day and it'll show you, is it left leaning or right leaning or somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
That's helpful. I think John Oliver, I think he dedicates a lot. I know he's super liberal. I know it. So anyone listening who's conservative is probably laughing at me for mentioning him, but he does do a lot of viral myth debunking. Like I
Yep.
think, he does like to debunk stuff. I think more and more people, if they did that, that would help. Um, yeah, the rest, fact checking, community notes, all that stuff. I don't know. So maybe I'll go back to hoping like the kids of the future learning how to detect, you know, phony stuff is helpful, and maybe we should all kind of look for those kinds of apps. I don't know. I
Cheers
always have to
to
try
that.
and bring in something a little
I
hopeful.
know.
I don't
I
know.
love it. I love it. No, that's yep. No, I mean, ultimately, you and I want to live in a place where it's hopeful and joyful, and possibilities exist. And there, this is a topic where, as we said, there isn't a lot of on the face of it hope around this. So I appreciate that, and yes, I do hope that Gen Z and Alpha and the generations to come do better than we have done.
Amen, sister. Yes.
All right,
And
so
we are committing to everyone listening that when we're gonna share things that we feel on here. And if we are ever wrong, we're gonna come back and tell you, because
oh yeah,
we're committed to that and we invite you to do the same in your worlds.
and again, these are the things we know, and we're not always right, but we will
Yes.
fix it. Yeah, I'll leave it at
Yes.
that. All right, so I went back to our 80s roots. I'm not sure this is exactly a song that is in alignment, but I went to look up songs that about facts, and I don't know, they were all kind of whatever. Actually, there was a song called Facts by Her, and I love her, and I wanted to use that, but it was really a romantic song, and it's like, well, that doesn't work. So I just went ahead and went back to General Public with As a Matter of Fact, their song, which just makes me so happy. It's literally the
I
lyrics are
love
nothing.
that
I
song.
know,
I
right?
love
That
that
whole
song.
album. Love it. Okay, matter of order is a matter of fact. The first to get told or the last to get asked. Just mind your ass when the buck gets passed. Mind over matter as a matter of fact. A matter of fact, the cards are stacked. As a matter of fact, it's a matter of class. What's the matter? 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 What's the matter of fact? Can you tell I know all those lyrics by heart? And I
I
sing them in
can.
my head when that song comes on.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a good song.
I
All
was just
right,
hearing
well,
it. As a matter of fact, I'm
right?
leaving. Yes, love it.
Love them. Love it. All right. Well, that's it for this week of the things we know. Would love to hear anything you want to say about it. If you are on Spotify, you can leave us comments. You can always email us at the things we know podcast 23. And obviously, you can always respond to any of our Instagram or Facebook posts around all of this. Yeah, I guess that's it
I'm
for
going
this
to
week.
challenge us the week this comes out, so I'll help you with it since you're usually the one doing it. I'm going to challenge us to share some of these, the most
Mm,
neutral sites that
love that.
that are doing a good job out there, like the nonprofit entities that are trying to really help debunk things and help you find truth. But keep reading, keep reading. That's what we both are wanting to do too.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.